Welcome to the Small Business Sisterhood podcast. I'm your host, Pepper Makepeace, an online business strategist for female solopreneurs and side hustlers, and the founder of the Small Business Sisterhood, an online membership community serving small business owners in the first stages of business. Join me as I go behind the scenes with female entrepreneurs, revealing the struggles, strategies, and inspiring stories of these amazing women. If you're interested in connecting with like-minded women in a supportive online community that helps you stay focused, motivated, and accountable as you build your business, check us out at smallbusinesssisterhood.com. Today we're talking to Rooshy Roy, founder of AAVRANI, a premium skincare company that reimagines India's ancient beauty rituals while harnessing the power of potent, all-natural ingredients. Their mission is to align inner confidence with outer radiance and empower women to embrace their all-natural beauty, challenge expectations, and redefine beauty standards at large. Thank you, Rooshy, for being on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you and learn more about you and your business. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pepper. I'm excited to chat with you about it.
So tell everybody a little bit about your business.
Sure. So, my name is Rooshy and my business is AAVRANI. It's the Indian-inspired skincare brand inspired by ancient rituals that I continue to use growing up with my family in Michigan. But it fuses those handcrafted formulas with clinically proven modern elegance. So really taking these ancient practices and traditions and elevating it and bringing it to modern day in a way that's inviting and exciting for everyone. So really happy to be here and talking to you more about that and my journey so far with it. It's been about 3 years.
That's wonderful. I want to hear more about the ancient traditions. Can you tell me a little bit more what you mean about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a thing I only recently started even appreciating myself, in the sense that these practices and sort of approach to all things personal care in India is just very different than it is in the US. First of all, in the US, the idea of health and wellness is kind of its own category, separate from beauty as an industry or space. Whereas in India, it's kind of blended together in the sense that the things you eat, the way you live your life, how you exercise, how you sleep, the way you speak to yourself, all of those things are core tenets of beauty at the end of the day. And so the approach is very holistic. So I grew up in a suburb of Detroit. My parents are immigrants from India. And through their sort of preserving the culture at home, I would make skincare treatments and hair care treatments with my mom and grandmothers and aunts in our immigrant community. And so it was a big part of just my upbringing and the way that I learned to interact with and play with beauty. And it wasn't really until I left home and went to college that I realized that that's not, or this is how I felt at the time, that's not like the cool, trendy thing that people are doing. Beauty is a very playful, sort of temporary thing, I guess, where it's tenuous. It's isolated from the way that we live our lives. And so having transitioned to sort of the products at Sephora and CVS and those sorts of products through beauty and skincare, I realized that it's not just the ancient approach that I appreciate, but the ingredients and the intention behind Indian skincare that I really want to bring back, not only for my own routine, but for everyone to enjoy. Now that we're starting to understand what we put on our skin is just as important as what we're putting into our bodies.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And that holistic approach, I think, is so beautiful because it does have an impact. Everything you do has an impact on how you kind of look on the outside. Mm-hmm. And the idea of beauty products just being kind of something you apply to the surface and it has nothing else to do with anything else in your life, it doesn't feel realistic or complete somehow. And I really love your approach. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy you appreciate that part of it, because I think that goes to a lot like deeper of an emotion that we have with beauty. I think we're programmed to work with it in this sort of temporary way in the US, whereas we're not feeling fulfilled or actually feeling beautiful by doing it that sort of way. And so I feel like the way we're conditioned to approach it here, it's almost impossible to actually end up feeling beautiful, because the way the industry even messages itself is from a place of lacking versus from a place of abundance. So it's like, is your hair thinning? Is your skin uneven? Do you have acne? Like really just trying to focus on all the things you need to fix, as opposed to sort of appreciating all the things that you actually are and feel, and that is our real beauty, right? Not just how we appear on that surface level.
Tell me about how you in your business decided to really embrace that traditional Indian ritual aspect of your approach.
Sure. Yeah. So I wanted to ensure that the Indian rituals were preserved to the most authentic degree, but at the same time, I know that in the U.S. We tend to interact with our beauty products differently. There's a system. There's usually a routine that women curate or like to adopt at once. There's not as much education around the exact steps to take. There are a lot of differing sort of opinions and then also approaches. With Korean skincare, sometimes there can be upwards of 15 steps. In order to sort of bridge the gap between that Indian approach, which is very handcrafted and sort of one off, into a more routine system, I basically took the bare minimum of a skincare routine that most people are used to and can easily digest, which is that cleanse, tone, moisturize, and eye cream. But then infused it with the exact Indian ingredients that make each of the formulas clinically proven and differentiated. So, for example, in the eye cream, that's activated by cold pressed sweet almond oil. Sweet almond oil is really, really great for hyperpigmentation. I grew up with my grandmother putting it on my knees and elbows where my skin's more pigmented on my body. And so it works so wonderfully under eyes for dark circles and puffiness. This sort of introduction of this Indian approach through a way that's understandable and relatable is exactly what I'm trying to build with AAVRANI as we build up our suite of beauty products.
I love that. So there's so many beautiful things about the Indian culture, as you know. What made you decide to start a business with skincare products? What was it that drew you to that kind of business?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that, because I am not a makeup person whatsoever. I literally just learned how to use a primer, or like even what a primer was. But beauty to me has always been elevating my natural look, doing the lowest maintenance sort of thing to make me feel as confident as possible. And so for me, that all starts with skincare. You can play with makeup and put on makeup, and I think that's a great expression of self, but it's not at the end of the day us and affecting our overall health and wellness. And that sort of goes back to the idea I was talking to you about earlier, which was bridging that beauty with health and wellness overall to create that holistic approach. So skincare was the natural first step for me as I thought about building the brand. I'm excited to break into hair care and body care over time, but it felt like beauty being redefined in the context of us, like in terms of attaching to us more permanently. Skincare felt like the best channel to introduce these Indian rituals.
I love the idea of ancient rituals. I think that that's very appealing to a lot of people, especially now. I think people are really kind of shying away from that more commercial aspect that's been there for so long, it seems like,
Mm-hmm.
at least in this country. And I love that you're incorporating more of that. Has it been, as you've started, I know you've been doing this for 3 years now, like how has it been starting a skincare company? Is it, I wouldn't know where to begin, I guess, is my what I'm
Yeah, no, and that's how I still feel, to be honest with you. I just, by way of quick background, I worked in finance for 6 years in my sort of career since college, and then going to business school 3 years ago in the summer of 2017 was really what drove me to pivot my life in terms of finding what I'm really passionate about, where my natural talents align. Really just trying to reorient the way I thought about my life and my work and the whole thing. So when I got started on it, I had no idea where to begin. I had no industry experience whatsoever. The very first thing I did was Google skincare manufacturers US, and then started reading from there. I think we forget how democratized information really is, and there's a sense of credibility or experience that we sort of demand on others and ourselves to pursue things. And one of my favorite parts of the journey so far is really understanding how much more we're all capable of doing than we think, if that makes sense. So, not knowing where to start is a natural feeling. I think it's really just a matter of getting out there, networking with people who have experience, and being resourceful, taking advantage of the, you know, free resources out there that is the internet, beauty magazines, articles, back end of company websites. There's so much data out there. It's just a matter of finding it and looking for it.
Yeah, I love that. You really just kind of bootstrapped from the beginning, just making connections and finding information. Google is such a business tool that I don't think we understand how much we have at our fingertips. Really, it's really
Oh,
amazing.
100%. And it's not just Google it. For example, our e-commerce platform, which is where we exclusively sell from, is still a Shopify template. I have no web design experience. My co-founder has no software or like computer science experience. We're both finance nerds, and Shopify was able to basically give us a template, and we kind of learned as we go. It was never easier, or it's never been easier to create your own website, outsource your own products, and just like see what you're interested in, what you're good at. And I think the moment I sort of reframed it in my own head about 6 months, 1 year into the business, into that sort of learning opportunity versus my business must be thriving and successful by everyone else's definition of that word. That's when I really started to actually flourish. Is when I cut those ties to why I started this in the first place.
I really appreciate that because I started out in corporate as well. And then when I first started my business, it's like I took that same mindset and tried to apply it to my business, and that same like concept of how you even think about how you work and what you're doing. And it's not directly translatable. I think that there is that shift at some point that says, this is my business. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to set my own goals and expectations for myself and my business, and that's okay. And I love that you've kind of experienced that as well, and how that feels in your business.
Oh, absolutely. And at first it was something I was fighting against. It almost feels like, how could it be that I can not, I am enough for this. You know what I mean? Like that sort of disconnect where we all kind of feel like imposters or frauds in what we're doing. The truth is, like, nobody really knows what they're doing as long as you are going after it with the right intent for the right reasons. It's almost like the universe rewards you for that work and persistence.
Absolutely. And we're all, no matter how long we've been in business, I think we're just learning along the way, as we come up with a new program or a new approach or a new product. we just learn as we go. Whereas when I think you're getting like a 9 to 5 job, you're expected to have a certain amount of skills already that qualifies you then for that job. Whereas being an entrepreneur, like the only skill that you need to have is to be able to learn as you go, really.
1,000%. Oh my gosh, yes. The skill of learning as you go is even something that you will naturally be able to do when you're doing the thing that actually interests you. So I want to also like break that notion of you even really have to be hyper talented in any sort of way by definition of like corporate skills. Like attention to detail, for example, was something that I was extremely poor at in my finance job. I actually got that in my reviews on a recurring basis, that I needed to improve my attention to detail. Little things like an extra space or a different size font for the period versus the rest of the sentence. Like I had to get very microscopically focused. And now when I'm creating my packaging, for example, like having to have the ingredients align with, the right regulations that we have printed on our packaging, I don't miss a beat. And it's because I am so obsessed with what I'm doing. And suddenly attention to detail is one of my strongest suits, I would say. So it's important to reframe these things in the sense that just because you might not be outstanding at certain metrics in the context of a corporation or someone else's dream doesn't mean that that's the case for your own dream.
I love that. That is so important to recognize in ourselves, is that just because we're not feeling the passion for somebody else's dream doesn't mean that we can't be passionate about something else, and learning the skills. Like you don't have the web design or e-commerce skills that it takes to, build a website from scratch, but you have the ability to figure it out in terms of what's available and what you can do with what you have. I love that. It's such a different mindset when you're looking at your own project and your own business. And I really appreciate that you're such a great example of how that really works out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think you hit it really on the head when you said you can make the best of what you have. I
Yeah.
think like we're almost like programmed to think like we need to fit, our resume needs to fit or be aligned with what someone else needs at that time in order to validate our skills or our own talent to ourselves. When really, as an entrepreneur, you have the freedom of crafting your team, your focus, your priorities around what you're good at and what you actually love to do. And everyone has a talent. Everyone is very special in their own way. It's just a difference of, did they have the time or energy or privilege to actually explore that or not?
Absolutely. Well, and I think that just really shines through in your business, taking this really unique aspect of your upbringing and your heritage and your culture, and using that to empower women and to help them feel confident and beautiful in a way that isn't possible in the traditional Western approach. And it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful combination of your values and your business, and having an impact in a greater way. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm just totally open kimono here. When I first started in 2017, by the way, I did not have this sort of appreciation for my culture or like feeling of, I'm a beauty brand founder. I wasn't, proud enough or confident enough to own the fact that, I was the CEO of something. Like I would put that in air quotes every time I would say it to anybody, because I couldn't
Mm,
even take it seriously myself. Like, CEO of what? You don't know what you're doing ever. You know what I mean?
right.
And it was that time where I stopped focusing on the business, in the sense of, for the business, I wanted to sell as much as possible, have as many customers as possible, really preserve as much customer loyalty, like all the things that a sound business needs to have in order to grow and thrive. That's all I was focused on. And for me, I didn't realize the disconnect of trying to be everything to everyone by optimizing for things like sale and reach. I was sort of compromising my own spirit and my own connection with the brand. I sort of had to do a lot of reflection and introspection in order to realize the reason I wasn't putting my whole self into the brand is because I myself, didn't feel beautiful growing up. I was one of very few people of color in my suburb that I grew up. It was a predominantly white neighborhood, and there wasn't anything wrong with that. It was just my friends and all the popular girls at school and the things I see in the magazines, like, just look nothing like me. So at a very early age, I was just kind of, signed up for that idea of, okay, you're not beautiful, you're going to be other things. I just kind of wrote that off as something I'm never going to really feel. And through the process of creating AAVRANI about 3 years ago and getting started in the whole thing, and then even soft launching the business in June of 2018, I realized, like, if I'm going to resonate and actually inspire women the way I've been inspired to start this brand, I'm going to need to put my whole self out there and sort of tell the truth behind this thing. Otherwise, the inspiration isn't going to be heard or felt by anyone.
That is so powerful and such an amazing realization on your part. I think that for a successful business, it's so critical that we are ourselves in it. And especially when your goal is to, obviously there's the business goals of sales and customers and things like that, but I know that your ultimate goal is to really support women, empower women, and help them to feel beautiful. And for that to happen, I respond to that in you, and I respond because you are so vulnerable about that and open about your story. And I know that can't be easy on your part to have kind of opened that part of yourself in your business. When did you, like, was there some sort of click or realization that led you to that? Like, what was it that really opened that up?
No. So, I mean, I would have to say it was definitely like a gradual thing as well. So as soon as we had soft launched, as I mentioned, in June 2018, and by that I mean the AAVRANI.com was live and we had our products available for sale. So we had to sort of figure out, okay, how do we market this thing? How do we build a team? Like, all the sort of scaling elements of the business. And as I was meeting with beauty editors, talking about my brand with potential investors, I was feeling that increasing level of disconnect. And when it kind of came to a head was when we made our first full-time hire in May of 2019, last year. I was bringing her on. She was going to be our head of marketing. And really just bringing her up to speed on the brand. I wanted this person to help. I was so excited to finally have an experienced person in this space to supplement everything that I've been just trying to figure out in Google for a year. Right. And even in the way I was relaying to her, the mission, the meaning, she asked me very simple questions like, why are you doing this? What drives you? And I was sitting there like, this should not take me this long to answer. And why, like, something's wrong here. And the funny thing is I was so quick to respond to those things to investors and to, or potential investors, I should say, and to the Instagram story, for example, right? Our social media followers. I had very clear rehearsed lines, like go-to things that became so almost on autopilot, where I didn't stop and think about what I was saying. And when I brought on this first full-time hire, and I was in that headspace of, be very thoughtful with what you're saying. This person is, your first employee, and they're going to bring a lot to the business here. Like, I have to be very honest. That's when I stopped and realized, okay, I'm not even believing myself with what I'm saying to her. Like, she's asked me why I started this, and there's no heart in it. I'm literally having to think about my answer here. And so I would say that was when it came to a head. And then last summer, I just really thought, okay, something's not right here. It took me about a month to internalize that, kind of get past my ego, if you will. And I realized, okay, we have something here. There's a clear white space in the market. Health and wellness trends are shifting to a space where beauty or Indian inspired beauty is well positioned to enter. I have all the macro pieces in place. Now, the last remaining thing is, am I going to put my whole self in it or am I not? And here's an opportunity for me to go back to the drawing board and create a brand that's as authentic as possible to me versus a brand that I think is going to sell off the shelves.
Wow. That's so amazing that you were able to recognize that and translate that into how you run your business. And I know that you've done a rebrand recently. Is that kind of a culmination of that?
Exactly. Yeah. So the rebrand that we launched last month, that was a result of, 18 plus months of work. Who's counting? But in terms of like me really trying to shift over the brand so that every little piece and detail is not just with intention, but is something that I'm proud to say is a reflection of me. Versus even before, it's not that the packaging was not beautiful by some standards or decent. It wasn't me. It was millennial pink, like accents because it worked for Glossier. So I just snagged that. Mm-hmm. It was green because it's natural and earthy, and Americans seem to associate that with natural here already with comparable companies. So let's take that. None of it was, what does Rooshy want, or what preferences does Rooshy have? What did she need as a little girl growing up out of a beauty brand? None of those things or questions sort of occurred to me until last summer. And what you see today, like the blue, fresh, bold look, is a interpretation of basically my answer to all those questions.
That's amazing. I love that. And branding is one of those things that I can geek out about and talk about for hours. And I love
Me too.
I just love that your branding is a reflection of these really powerful questions you've been asking yourself, because I think that when branding is a result of that, then it speaks so much more volume. It speaks volumes to the business and speaks so much louder and clearer to your prospective audience and customers. And I'm so excited that your brand, because I love your brand, your new brand. I didn't know your brand before.
Thank you.
And your new brand is it does something in my chest. Like I feel it in my heart or something. And I know.
Oh, you're going to make me cry.
But there are very few brands, I'm always looking at branding and how that it incorporates the values of the company and how it has a voice to the company. And yours in particular, it's like, I just love it. I love everything about it. And so I'm really excited to know that it is in fact a reflection of you and your values, and even like what would Rooshy as a child have wanted in a skincare line. Like I just love that that's just speaking through that. Good job.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Pepper. No, I can't wait to send you some products so you can touch and hold it too, because if you appreciate the branding, I'm excited for you to appreciate like the touch and feel and velvet matte secondary, all those little details that I agonized over. But specifically on branding, I'd love to talk about that for a second, because that I didn't learn the easy way. I feel like in talking about this stuff in retrospect, it's easy to say like, oh, I did all the right things. I spent a lot of money on freelancers on initial parts of the branding before I realized that I needed to do it myself. And one of those parts was on the logo. That was the first thing I wanted to change and give it a whole new look. Mm-hmm. And I went through 3 individual freelancers. I didn't have the funds to hire a full-on branding agency. And now looking back, thank God I didn't, because I would have very conveniently outsourced the entire thing. When I started with just even the logo, it took me 3 individuals who, quote unquote, just didn't get it in my head, for me to realize that I needed to be the one to create it. the funny thing was, like, after even the first couple that didn't work out, I was still in an ego headspace of, well, they don't get it. They're not talented enough. I just can't afford a better one. And so this is a result of how much I'm able to pay for a logo right now. All the things that was like, everything but me is the problem. You know what I mean? And after the third one, it was just like, okay, it can't be that everyone sucks, right? Like, I'm vetting these people. I see their websites. I see other companies that they've made beautiful designs and logos for. Like, it can't be possible that just for AAVRANI, they're suddenly, paralyzed or lost their talent. It's that I hadn't, developed as deep of a connection with the brand to even articulate to them. So even looking back at the briefs I had created for them, it's so shallow. And it as far as it went, even talking and owning about the Indian heritage was saying where the name came from, which Rani in Bengali and Hindi and a lot of other Indian languages means queen. And so I wanted the name to center around queen, but I didn't even say we were an Indian inspired skincare brand. And so how are they going to be able to capture the essence and heart of something that I hadn't even really confronted myself? And so as a result of also running out of money to outsource anything after the third freelancer, it was once again being backed into a corner, or like feeling like I was being backed into a corner, when really I feel like the universe was almost pushing me or smacking me over the head to be like, you need to do this yourself.
That's amazing. So how do you design a logo by yourself?
Good question. So once again, like, no idea, right, where to even begin. I knew that I had AAVRANI, the name, and the old logo, right? And it's funny you asked this specifically because I actually share an Instagram post, which I'll DM to you after this podcast, where I literally talk about the thoughts that are going in my head as I start the logo. I am in a very negative headspace of like, well, you're not even an artist. All those people have done such beautiful work for all these other brands. What makes you think that you're going to be the one to create something? All that sort of negative speak and self-doubt that ends up coming to a head in those moments. I write about that, and then I realized that, okay, not everything is negative, but everything I'm thinking right now is negative. So I'm just as much in control of a bunch of positive things that I can think about right now, right? So as a first order of things, the first logo wasn't that bad. You created that one, right? And look how far you got. So let's start there. What do you want to change about that logo? Okay, I don't want to do a medallion because I want the name to stand on its own. So I took away the lotus vector that was in front of the old logo. And then I thought, okay, well, I don't want it to lose the Indian roots. I want to be able to, embed something outside of just a plain sans serif font, right? So that was another constraint I had in mind. And then little things like it was all lowercase before. And I thought, you know what? I want to be bold, unapologetic with this brand. Let's up those caps. I don't take myself that seriously, or I don't want to be taking myself that seriously. So let's get rid of the serifs. It was just one of those things where I just kept doing little things based off of what kind of fit my aesthetic and preference until I was satisfied with it. And the final part was adding that little touch of something special to embody the idea of Rani, because I thought, okay, if I don't have an image or a medallion and it's just going to be text, how do I make the word Rani stand out a little bit more for those who know or want to learn what it means? And I decided to disrupt the whole sans serif with that more hand-drawn loop in the R to sort of juxtapose the cleanliness and minimalism of the look, and also be able to call out Rani so that people would know that, there's a little something different with the R, so it makes you also read Rani in terms of a visual receiving perspective. So those were just the thoughts that literally went through my head, and I just kept adjusting. And then I decided, you know what, I'm satisfied with this. Let's move on. And I just stopped. I think that's another thing that we get in our heads on, or I would get trapped in this where I spin my wheels endlessly. I technically can continue to stare at the logo and improve it until, the sun goes down, but to what end, right? Like there's a point in time where you have to decide, you know what, this is good enough. This is a great reflection of my work. Maybe it's not a Matisse, but it's enough. Let's move on to the next thing. And I struggled with that a lot during the first year. And this rebranding process also helped me navigate that a bit. I'm still working on it, but it helped me navigate it because you can go into the deep end down to, which Pantones to watch, what is the spacing here or there. Like I would have gotten lost in that. So I think the branding sort of phase of me sort of doing it myself and also growing a team and realizing, perfect is not the opposite of good. Like there's a balance here that I need to fix before I continue to throw myself into this company.
Yeah. I love that whole process. And I love that you stopped yourself when it was good enough because I mean, we can, and I know so many entrepreneurs out there that do spend way too much time tweaking this or that, especially on website stuff and logo stuff, like just tweaking it. You really could spend all your time just doing that. And that's not really serving your business. But the whole process of you, thinking about your logo and how it reflects you and what you're wanting your business to be. And I just love that. I think that that can be really powerful for new entrepreneurs out there that are in that same space of, maybe they don't like their logo, maybe they don't have a logo, but really thinking about it from a different way than copying what they think is, what everybody else is doing. It seems to be kind of a first stop for people sometimes that, what's working for other people. And it's really not about that. It's really a reflection of what is your business about and how does it express that in the best way it can. And I love your process so much. Like, I think that that's so perfect that every little bit of it was just, this is what I'm wanting to reflect and this is how I'm going to do that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I love what you said there about, coming from it in a place of what you actually want and what you have to offer. It's that same thing of, as an entrepreneur, knowing that you're coming from a place of abundance, because there's a reason why you're pursuing what you want. You're aggressively passionate about that thing. There's a way you can harness that passion into something like a logo, even if it doesn't make sense that it should. Like the world tells us we need to have experts advising us on every little bit. And we forget, like, the fact that we felt so inclined to start something on our own means that there's an inner passion that needs to be harnessed in a way that you don't yet even realize.
Right. Well, and the voice of your business, no one is a better expert at that than you, right? So really understanding the heart of your business, that's our job as entrepreneurs, is to know that in and out, which is what you have done. And then having that reflected in something like a logo that's a process that, some designers can help and some can't. But if we can't express it ourselves, like you've experienced, then it's never going to be something.
Yeah, then it doesn't exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, you said the exact right issue I had. I couldn't even express it. So how was I possibly going to expect these designers to be in my own head or heart and get me something I like? Like I was never going to like anything that they came back with.
Tell me about the blue, because I'm obsessed with the blue and I just absolutely love it.
Thank you. So this was another thing. And actually the blue was the first sort of leap into the direction of the more free-spirited, bold aesthetic I was looking for. But I didn't actually decide on it until the end of the year, last year, when I had to make a call on packaging in order to get this thing launched in time. So I was dilly-dallying around the blue, but the first time it struck me was last summer in June. I was debating around how to make my brand stand out in a way that was authentic to me. I felt like during the first year, and even the way I told you I approached the first version of the packaging, it was very much on, okay, what colors are left? What has not been taken? Like Glossier kind of took millennial pink. Tatcha took like this pearlized light lavender and mint kind of palette. So-and-so took this and that. Drunk Elephant took the neon. And that, once again, is from a place of what is everyone else doing, right? And to me, it felt like if I was gonna make this the most me, I needed to make it abundantly clear that we weren't going to follow those sorts of guidelines. And the initial reaction that I had gotten when I very casually floated blue with my co-founder and a couple of investors that we already had, the response was, "Are you kidding? Like blue for a women's beauty brand? Like, what are you thinking? It's so masculine. It's loud. It kind of looks like water sporty, and all the things that made me start second guessing myself and why I sort of dilly-dallied on this decision for months. I just kept feeling like, oh my gosh, people are literally laughing at me over this blue, but blue is my favorite color. And there's something so balanced about this particular hue where it is bold and in your face, but it's also calming and understated in the sense that it's not trying to be like, look at me, but it's also not going to sort of sit there in the bunch quietly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And these sorts of feelings that were really just manifestations, once again, of my true personality and self. I couldn't really identify why that sort of balance or play that this blue has was so important to me at the time. But now I'm realizing it was because that's who I am, and that's how I feel. That's the color that I feel embodies my spirit in the most authentic way. And so that was what drove the blue. And then when I filled out the rest of the color palette, I still wanted to take it through that very personal lens. I didn't want to just do what matches with the blue. So I continue staying intentional when I thought about my relationship with Indian culture today, or the things I think about India. It's very different than my relationship with it growing up. Growing up, it was almost a compartmentalized part of my life. There was the Indian group and then the American or white or whatever else you want to call it group that never fused. It was always one or the other. I felt like I had one foot in each. And this brand was really my way of not only fusing that or fusing the cultures, but really owning the Indian Americanness as its own genre, as its own lived experience. I think sometimes when you come from somewhere else or are mixed or have any sort of just like quote unquote fragmented, history, it almost feels like we are isolated when really that unique blend is what makes you so special, is what's so niche and should be celebrated. And so when I thought about my interpretation with India today, it is that celebration, camaraderie, family. I told you I made these rituals growing up with my mom, and every time we'd go to India, Kolkata every year growing up with my grandmothers, the process of creating it was very communal. It was very family oriented. All the women of the community would do it together. And so the colors that sparked those feelings for me was that bright, vibrant orange, which also reflects our key ingredient of turmeric in our hero product. And then the bright fuchsia, which is a burst that's through all of Indian textiles, design, just traditional, even aesthetics. And so the bold fuchsia, bold orange on the cobalt blue, those three together kind of set the stage for filling out the rest of the color palette around it.
It's such an embodiment of you and your business. And I think that's just so beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, even in the way that I talk about it now, I was telling you, I struggled to talk about my brand when it was with that prior packaging, because I myself didn't feel so proud to hold it next to my face or hand it to someone because I knew it wasn't a reflection of me. And now I'm just so obsessed with it. I'm just so proud of it because I know it's It's like all I have to give. And if this isn't enough, then maybe this isn't like the right pursuit for me. Maybe beauty isn't the right thing for me, but I'm never going to question, did I not put my whole self into it? Right. And I think that sort of internalization or satisfaction with all I want is to be able to try my best and then I'll do my best. That has really served as a driver of my mindset these days.
That's wonderful. So powerful. So what advice would you give for somebody just starting out now that, as they're looking at their branding or looking at their business and how they talk about it, like what advice would you give?
Yeah. So I used to actually say, my advice was just start doing it, start exploring it. I think we get in a sense of once we have the perfect plan or the perfect outline, then we'll be in a position to start and explore. Or when a problem arises, for example, like, oh, this competitor came out and they're 3 times as big as us in the same geographic footprint. It's one of those things where at every turn you can decide, is this something I'm going to navigate or is it something that's going to make me shrivel or like make me think I can't do this anymore? And starting it or just getting started and exploring it is what gets you to grow the company. There's no point in time where the switch flips and you're an entrepreneur. It's right. The moment your mind literally starts focusing on it and you start to iterate. And the initial sort of setbacks, quote unquote setbacks you get, I would redefine as, once again, just navigating the journey. If you were doing everything right from the beginning, then there would be no room to grow. The thing would exist already. There would be no disruption to be had. Right. And I think we forget that and end up taking those mistakes or failures more personally as rather than like indicators of your business and where you need to shift from an objective standpoint. Yeah. So I would say just start, and I keep saying just start, but I'll say a more refined version of that first, which is network and connect as much as possible. The first thing to just starting is building that confidence and sort of silencing the overwhelming self-doubt that occurs, at least from my personal experience. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to just talk to and meet with and connect with as many other female entrepreneurs as possible. It doesn't even have to be in your industry. It's something about realizing that as a woman, as someone who's going out there with maybe not a bunch of credibility or experience, that it's fine. I can still do it. I can still fail. It's not the end of the world. And the only way to keep reminding yourself of that is meeting with and talking to other women who will tell you that is in fact the case, that they're still messing up. They still have no idea what they're doing. And they still feel like every day is the first day that they're starting something. Like to this day, I would say I come in every day feeling like I'm, just trying to figure this out. What is the next thing I can do to figure it out versus why isn't my company succeeding? Why am I not good enough? Oh, who's doing what else that's remotely similar to me? It's almost like shutting off the outside world and focusing on your journey and your passion.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a wonderful piece of advice. And it's something that can really trip us up if we don't kind of let go of that comparison trap or that feeling like a fraud. But just kind of putting our heads down and doing the work and being authentic in our business. It can be so powerful. And I love that you are such a beautiful example of how that is. It can be such a success and such a beautiful expression of life and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that. I that's really how I see the business now, is just the truest interpretation of who I am. This is not a business to make my salary or a business to garner fame, any of those things that are ancillary that maybe might feel like that's what you need to grow and do what you want. Mm-hmm. Like we always have everything we need to pursue what we want. It's the world and our own self-doubt that tells us that we don't.
That's Perfect. And I'm going to end this there because that is the perfect statement to kind of culminate.
Perfect. Oh, I love it.
I really appreciate you being on the podcast and talking with us about your process and your business. I look forward to sampling all your products and just kind of gobbling them up because I'm so excited about them and the story that comes with them. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pepper, for giving me this opportunity. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm so happy to share my story with your audience.
Thank you, Rooshy, for talking with us today. You can find more information about Rooshy and the link to her website and the show notes for this episode at smallbusinesssisterhood.com/23. I hope you found this episode useful and inspiring. If you did, please pop over to iTunes and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.